What's up, everybody? Clinton Foshee here, and
I'm Albert Chavez.
And this is Front Porch Chronicles, and we're super excited. Leading up to the PFL playoffs in a couple of weeks, we have a legend, Liz Gorilla Carmouche. Not only is she an amazing fighter, a United States Marine veteran, Liz, thank you so much for your service and taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
So I know we prefaced a little bit right before. I've only been diving into the UFC and PFL space just over a year since working with Clinton. And so, dude, you've had such an amazing career going off. Probably one of the most underrated in all of UFC and PFL history. And it's just great. You've had people fighting. You've beaten Valentina Shevchenko, Jessica Andrade, Miesha Tate you fought in Ronda Rousey. And so we wanted to kind of just explore that a little bit more. Like how is it like being able to like have such a long career? How's that impacted your life?
I think being an athlete, I really prioritize just being as healthy as possible and making this a lifestyle. I think where other athletes kind of go wayward is they enjoy like the freedom, right? Especially if you're in organizations other than the PFL. You don't get a guaranteed schedule for fighting. So you may have a fight and then we have another 6 months, 8, 9 months off. So a lot of people take that time and they just relax and they enjoy eating, drinking, partying, having a good time. But this is my lifestyle. This is who I am 24/7. So the nice thing about that is PFL caters to that. And it's also helped benefit my career because I've let every organization I've ever been a part of know that I'm ready any day, anytime. Give me a call. I'll take a last minute fight against you're number one in the world. I don't care. And because of that, I've gotten phone calls and opportunities that other people passed on. And as a result, it's helped elevate my career to where it is today.
Legendary career. I know fighters never like to say that, but like legendary career of the people that you fought. And I know you're coming off of a 9-fight win streak. And getting ready for the PFL. How is training camp going leading into that?
Training camp is good. Like I said, win or lose, I'm always back to the drawing board immediately. Like if I fight on Saturday, I'm back on Monday because I want to refine all the mistakes that I've made. I want to increase the likelihood that I have success in the future, even if that came off of a win. Even if it's a 35-second win, I still see mistakes that I make in the fight that I want to work on. And to me, the more time that you take off from that, the more that you lose the momentum that you had going into it. So for me, being in PFL is great. And each camp that I keep going into, I just feel better and better and more prepared for the fights. And it's really nice to be able to have back-to-back fights without having to wait 9 months to a year for my next one.
That's one of the things with the PFL, just to be honest, that I've kind of admired lately. Is that structure, because with the UFC, and we've talked to some people in the past about it, it's almost become somewhat political, especially in the women's, on the women's side of it, especially, is because if you're not tweeting, you're not mainstreaming, or you're not fitting into the narrative, and I'm trying to be politically correct, but if you're not fitting into the narrative of what is going to be beneficial, you might sit on the shelf in the UFC for 3, 6, 9 months. And like you said, some people aren't necessarily comfortable taking a short notice fight. And if you're not, you could end up missing out on a lot of things.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely one of the problems that I had is my first year fighting. I had 8 or 9 fights my first year. And I thought that that's what the tempo of fighting was always going to be. And then as I started to move up the ranks and go to different organizations, I was getting 1, 2 fights a year. And I was like, this isn't for me. I don't like the waiting game. Like I want to stay in the loop all the time and keep improving and getting better and keeping that, because you build rust. Even if you're training all the time, competitive MMA is different than training MMA. Right. Yes. So you can keep on doing what you need to, but it's not the same when you're in that cage. So PFL definitely caters more to my lifestyle and what I prefer.
And it definitely helps out because a lot of people don't realize or understand with fighters, they have this fantasy land that you as fighters just have this copious amount of, number one, of money, and then number two, if you don't fight, you don't get paid. And so if you have injuries or you're sitting on the shelf 3 to 6 months, the bill collectors or your mortgage or they don't care that the other organizations don't have you lined up for a fight. They need their money. And so, yeah, it definitely helps out.
Yeah, I don't think enough people know about the struggles that fighters go through. Very few of us are able to not have full-time jobs outside of fighting. And it's a very limited few that are able to achieve that. When I was trying to tell one of our fighters, like, all right, cool, you're about to go pro, just heads up, like the cost of medicals, of doing your licensing fees per state, getting your corner fees. And it's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, as a professional athlete, like you're responsible for paying licensing for your corners as well as yourself, your medicals, which you're hoping maybe they're only $500, but realistically, they're probably going more towards $5,000, especially if you don't have insurance.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're going to take your 20% that goes to your management. You're going to take the 10 to 20% that goes to your coaches for sacrificing with you and being there. And then let's not count the amount that goes for taxes because you're an independent contractor. And nobody ever gets that. They're like, wait, so you walk out of there with like, what, 10, 20%? Like, yeah, that's what we're getting.
And the travel expenses, and people don't understand, it's not like you're just paying for your own travel expenses. So that's why I was telling Albert, we were watching another friend of ours that's a fighter. He was like, they're all bunched up in one room. And I'm like, dude, as fighters, it's almost like you go back to dorm life. Because it's like you can't afford to pay for every individual 4 different rooms. So most of the times you're rooming together, you're eating together, all of those things, because it's very expensive to keep up with a lot of that. So yeah.
Well, it makes sense then why you'd want to fight back to back to back too.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly that too. Yeah.
Not only do you like want to get that rust off of you, you also want to like get paid too, and make sure you can feed all your family too and stuff like that too. So, I was curious. I like to ask the fighters this: do you have like a before fight ritual that you like to do to get yourself amped before going to the octagon?
Not as much amped. So I'm not that person that fights with like the adrenaline. Like I wish I did, because it'd be great when I get hit clean. I'm like, man, that hurt. I'm like, man, I wish I wouldn't feel it. I could just feel it all after the fight. Instead, I'm in there and I'm like, just play it off. It was fine. It didn't hurt that bad. So I wish I could get myself like super amped and do that. But really, the ritual for me is just staying chill for the day and not getting that adrenaline going, because with it, you get the adrenaline rise and then you get the adrenaline dump, and you're hoping that the adrenaline dump happens after the fight, right? That you can carry it all the way through, but oftentimes it doesn't happen. So I try and just be chill and just joke around with the coaches and all the way up until we have to go out to the fight. We're watching ridiculousness and things like that, just cracking jokes the whole day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like everyone has their own styles. People either like to be with their friends, or some people just like to be isolated and just only focus on what's going to be ahead of them. And it's always curious for me to hear what each fighter has to go through to make sure they can get mentally prepared.
Yeah, I mean, I've had family. My mom is like Vietnam era, right? And so she was there seeing what all the troops went through before and volunteered a lot as a candy striper, helping the troops that came back. So she has a whole different perspective on like violence, and does not condone violence at all, right? I was taught at a very young age, walk away from things. And I was always that kid who's like, yeah, but they pushed that little kid for no reason. I got to go fight them because that's not right. I was like, why did you get in a fight? Because they shoved that little kid in a puddle. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Kid, right? So I was always coming back like, I'm sorry, I got another fight again. So here I am, like I joined the Marine Corps, and she's like, of all the branches, it had to be the Marine Corps. I'm like, yeah, sorry, Mom. And then I get into fighting. So she never watched any of my fights. She's seen 2 in person. And after the last one, she's like, I can't watch these in person. I'm like, yeah, it's super stressful having you. I can feel your energy in the hotel, and it's not positive. You're all the way on the other side of the hotel, and I know you're here. So I like to stay away from family and friends, especially because if they're not in that world and they don't understand it, or like say it's a new fighter and they have all these questions, you're like, look, I want to answer your questions, but it's really draining. Like, just chill, dude. We're just hanging out.
Especially during weight cuts. I was telling Albert, because RDA is a good friend of mine. He cuts down to 55. So he walks around jacked at like 90, 85 and 90, and cutting down to 155. you have to be very selective as fighters during weight cuts, especially because it is the worst. It is, to me, the absolute, and I've had 2 amateur fights, nothing on that level, but even then, like, the weight cuts are absolutely brutal. So you have to be very selective with who you surround yourself with, because it gets so stressful. And if people get in their emotions or their feelings and don't understand or know the struggle of what you're going through as a fighter, cutting that extra, especially the last part of the weight cut, it makes things a lot worse than it has to be.
Yeah, my wife was an amateur fighter, and she wrestled in high school and then taught high school wrestling. So she certainly understands it. But even her, she was there. She wanted the weight cuts because coaches we had multiple fighters going. So the coaches were all over the place. Yeah. And she's like, I'll go with Liz. I'll help her during the weight cut. And she's like, yeah, I don't like watching you cut. This is really hard on me. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, when it's friends or it's myself, that's different. Watching my wife do that, she's like, I don't like it. So it even changes, like having friends, having family there changes everything. My coaches, when I'm doing the weight cut, they're just hanging out watching TV. I hear ridiculousness for the Food Network going, and then I'm just cutting. When I come out, I'm like, I'm good. I really just have them there just to make sure I don't accidentally kill myself. And just,
I was gonna say Fallout.
Like I'm not the fighter where they'd have to hold me in the bathtub or lock me in the sauna. Like, I'm not that person. Just make sure that I don't do something stupid. That's it.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it for so long too, you kind of know. But isn't it strange, like, how we want to make all of our friends and family comfortable even though they're not there? I always find that fascinating, with like why we feel like we have to do that and like make sure they're all right.
And I think that's why a lot of fighters, whenever it comes to traveling, separate the two, because you almost have to separate the two because it is so stressful going to these events. And again, people don't know, like, it's not just you show up and fight. Like, you're cutting weight, like, which is brutal, but you're also having to do photo shoots. You're also having to do interviews. You're also having to do all of the extra things. So that was one of the things with the podcast. We started looking at when we were going to interview people, and Albert's like, oh, they've got a fight coming up on such and such. I'm like, dude, you're not going to want to do any type of interviews or talking during a weight cut. We might get our heads chewed off.
Yeah. So with that being said, we want to kind of dive more into your background a little bit. Can you share with us what made you want to transition from the Marine Corps to MMA?
So when I originally was looking at MMA, my third tour to Iraq, it would be playing, like we'd be watching it, and really our unit was really into it. And I started getting into it more, and I got the BJ Penn book, and I tried doing the workouts, and I really liked the diet. And my first tour, I wanted to see how much weight I could lose. And then I felt like I wasn't really that healthy. And second tour was like, how much muscle can I put on? I'm like, well, that's not really healthy either. So the third tour for me was me trying to find a balance between those, and how can I be lean but be strong and also be as healthy as possible, and MMA kind of fit the bill for that. And I'm like, well, that seems like a lot of fun. I really want to get into that, but I didn't know what the possibilities were at that time for me. I knew that I didn't have a martial arts background, so if I really wanted to follow this, like, I started doing research, and I'm like, I'll be lucky if I have an amateur fight after 2 years of training. Like, I would be lucky if that would happen. I had no ideations that I'd be a professional. Did I want to? Absolutely. Like, I thought I could fight pro cyborg, but really was getting into it just to see how far I could go with it. And my third deployment, I had been like filing for jobs. I was sending out my resume, and I didn't really know how to write a resume, and it was horrible, but I didn't know it at the time. But I applied for so many jobs and just kept getting shut down over and over. So when I got out, I'm like, wow, I guess I have no choice. I have to use the GI Bill, and that wasn't the plan. I'm not really good at being in school and sitting still. Like, MMA works because my attention span is all over the place. It's perfect, right? I'm constantly moving. But sitting still and having to focus, not good for me. Sit there and write a paper, not good. Read something, right? So I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to do my plan C. Not even my plan A, not my plan B, my plan C of if everything hits the fan, this is what we have to do. So I went to school full time, used the GI Bill, and then trained at night. And it was just like, well, this I love. This is something I want to commit to and see where it goes. Maybe I get amateur, maybe I go pro, but I'm just enjoying the process. And then before I know it, I had my first amateur fight after 4 months of training, my first pro fight after 5 months of training. And then fast forward 14 years, I'm still doing this professionally.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but But it's one of those things, honestly, this is something kind of I talk about, like we talked about off. My brother, who was a US Marine as well, seeing him kind of similar to you whenever, he was medically retired from the Marines. And I could see the panic and the worry in his eyes because he was on his second stint with the Marines. And so when you join the Marines, some people join it just for, oh, okay, I need an out of where I'm at. And then some people join it like, hey, this is my career. Like, this is what, I don't really know what I want to do beyond that. And so I know for my brother, seeing kind of similar, he was filling out applications and he wasn't getting jobs and he wasn't getting callbacks and he wasn't getting, and I think that's where, as the government, the Marines, the different military branches, they really need to do better about setting you up for success after, like with job training, filling out resumes, all of those things that you need. We do real estate. It's one of those things, and it seems simplistic, but a lot of military veterans think, oh, well, I've got my VA loan, so we're good to go on being able to purchase a home. So a lot of them don't necessarily save up a lot of money because they don't get paid a lot of money, but B, it's hard to, save up. And so when they get ready to use the VA loan, it's difficult to use the VA loan because there's not a lot of money put down with those type of loans. And so a lot of sellers don't necessarily go, we're able to paint a portrait and a picture for the veterans that we've worked with to help get their offers accepted with the VA bill. But it's one of those things that it's very difficult. So these people, you guys have put your life on the line for our freedoms. And I just think it's very important that we create programs to set you up for success. Luckily, you were able to go on to have a legendary, a career and still going. So kudos to you for finding a way when they didn't really give a lot of options.
Yeah, no, it was definitely difficult. I mean, I was fortunate that friends that I'd served with were married and they lived off base. So we all got a house together because I was just going to live out of my car. I knew I didn't have money. I didn't have a job. That was just, I'm like, well, I have a car. I can sleep in that. That's easy. I've slept in worse conditions. Right? And it's crazy that somebody can serve in office and for the rest of their life doing a term of 4 years in a safe environment, AC, getting their lunch breaks, only working 9 to 5 for the rest of their lives, they're set. And yet we can write over a check that doesn't guarantee a future for us and gives us limited money, limited resources. We serve 4 to 6 years, deploy who knows how many times, putting our life on the line, get out and then have nothing for us. Like, that's ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. It should be that the same, like if you want to give benefits for those that serve in office, give those same benefits for the troops that they're willing to send to risk their lives and put them out on their deathbed, essentially, so often. You see a lot of, particularly in California, a lot of the homeless are veterans. They're people that have served and have struggles or mental illness that they experience because of the military, and then they're just discarded and left there. And that's a sad reality that shouldn't be the way it is.
I agree 1,000%. And it definitely needs to be something that needs to be
addressed a little bit more. Yeah. It's fascinating because you said you served 3 tours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like just going out and putting your life on the line that often, just like giving your time and energy into something like that too. You sign your contract to be with the government during that time frame. And so you've given so much to your country already. So it's just curious. And like, I always question, like, why would someone want to go and do that when you aren't being like, it's not reciprocated to you as well?
Yeah. And I think it was less about like looking at the government as I was looking at the people that I served with, right? The last thing I want to do, especially my 3rd deployment, I had to extend my contract. I only had a 5-year contract. I extended it for another 4 months to deploy with them because I knew they were going out there and they didn't have the personnel and weren't ready to go on that mission. And the last thing I want is for them to come back and me hear about friends losing their lives because they didn't have the personnel that were trained to be able to do that. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go out there one more time. And then also there was this program called the Lioness program. And it was everything I wanted to do in the Marine Corps. I got to be attached to a grunt unit, go out there, go on patrols, search. I'm like, okay, again, I get to go out there and help people and do something that's super cool. And I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity. So for me, it was worth it, regardless of what the agenda was of the government. It was about helping the Marines that were a part of my lives and want to go out one more time to help them.
No one's going to understand that too. Like your desire to want to go and like support them too. They're like, you're crazy. Why would you go do that? But it's probably something like you went through boot camp with them and all that hard training to go into. It's kind of like MMA fighting too. Like when you train with all your you spar and train with everyone else, like you're doing that not just for them, but with them in that process.
Exactly.
So we're always curious. What was your family's reaction when you told them, "Hey, I'm gonna go and make this a career and turn pro"?
Well, like I said, my mom is like anti-violence, and when she'd ask, she's like, "So what are you doing with your time now? I know that you're using the GI Bill." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm training martial arts." And she's like, "Oh, cool," because I did different forms of karate when I was little, but it'd be like a month longest at a time. Right. I do like Aikido for a month, Taekwondo. I didn't have the attention span and we didn't have the money. Soccer is what I was able to stick with the longest. So she's like, "Yeah, you really liked that as a kid. I could see that working out for you." And I was like, "Yeah." And she's not Googling to verify when I say mixed martial arts what I mean. Right. And finally, and so she was living in Japan at that time. And I remember her giving me a phone call in the middle of the night. She's like, "Are you kidding me? Are you doing the fighting in the cage?" I'm like, "Wait, what?" It's 3:00 in the morning. What's going on here? I'm like, yeah, cage fighting. Don't they lock you in there to fight each other? I'm like, it's not to the death. Like we can exit there. But she was horrified. She's like, "Well, you're wearing headgear?" And I'm like, "No, we can't in the fight." "Well, are you wearing the stuff for your legs?" My shin guards? "No." "Are you wearing?" I'm like, "No, none of that." She's like, "Please tell me you're wearing gloves." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm wearing gloves and a mouthpiece." That's it for protective equipment. And of course, at 3 a.m, I'm not like trying to shelter and kind of like have her receive things in a much better way, So I was just no filter. I'm like, "Yeah, doing stuff in the cage. Yeah, I get hit all the time by way bigger guys. Getting hit by the girls is fine." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, that wasn't the right thing to say." So it definitely didn't take very well, but very quickly, like in saying that I always stayed ready, is I got a phone call to fight Marlo's Conan Strikeforce for the world title. So where I had been a nobody who knew who I was, I took a 9-day notice fight to fight against a girl that had 10 years. And I've been training 8 months and she had 10 years experience just in MMA, right? Not including she's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai world champion, like all those things. And because of it, like everybody's like counting me out. They're like, "Oh, she's going to get guillotined in the first 20 seconds. And I ended up making it through that. And so my mom had been reading everything. She's like, "Oh, do you realize who you're fighting?" Because she would then start reading stuff. And she's like, "You're all over newspapers. You keep popping up on my Google feed nonstop." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I guess I definitely can't hide it anymore." And she's like, "All right, I guess this is like a real thing." And began to get more supportive. And then certainly when women got accepted into the UFC, that really changed her mind about my role in professional fighting, where she saw it actually going. But even then, it was still kind of like, not really there. She's born and raised in New York City. So when I fought in MSG, that's what changed everything. And she's finally like, "Oh, okay, I accept you. I accept you as a fighter."
New Yorkers always, when you say MSG, it's like, "We're not worthy. We're not." So let me ask you a question. I know you've taken a lot of short notice fights. You're on a strict. How do you feel like being a Marine kind of helped with your schedule as an MMA fighter? Because a lot of people don't understand how complex the schedule is, especially when you throw in family dynamics. Yeah. Like, how do you think that's helped?
Yeah, I think the great thing about the Marine Corps is it's the least funded of all the branches.
Yes.
Right. And so they'll tell us like, "Okay, we need you to complete this mission, and here's a paperclip. Go." And you're like, "Wait, what? How are we supposed to get there? How are you feeding us?" They're like, "You guys will figure that out. Like, we have faith in you. Go for it." So you learn how to work with absolutely no resources and still accomplish the goal. Right. So I feel like that's helped a lot, because even if like we have a holiday, nobody shows up at the gym and I'm just there by myself, like, well, I have a fight coming up, I have to train. I'll still find a way to get my 6 hours into training without the training partners, right? And so that's helped because I've faced numerous amounts of adversity having deployed to Iraq where I know that I can overcome anything. I've been given opportunities to have to complete a mission with no resources to do it. And I know I can still complete that mission. And that was under duress in people's lives. So just me training myself, that's easy, right?
Yeah.
And then too, the discipline that you learn from the Marine Corps and being able to do, like, I would do workouts. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't have time to go to the gym today. I'm hanging on the side of the aircraft doing pull-ups, using toolboxes to do weights. Like, you find resources with anything that you can make up in your mind. And not many branches do that, but the Marine Corps does. And that's translated so well to help me succeed in MMA.
I say the Marines are the MacGyver.
Yes.
They're the MacGyver of the military units. Definitely. They're going to figure out a way to make it happen no matter what it is.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
epic. So for the viewers that don't really know much about MMA, what does a typical day look like for Liz Carmouche?
I think I probably train more than most other fighters that I know, right? I start off in the morning and I usually do about an hour of cardio. For me, I'm trying to get to the fat burning level. So that really means basically just walking. So I jump on my air diet and just totally chill, read a book, watch TV for an hour. Then I head and I do jujitsu training for about an hour, hour and a half. Then I go do strength training or explosive training like sprints. Then I have situational mitts with my coach. Then I have striking. Then I have, sometimes I'll jump into another no-gi session for training or do some more light cardio or just shadowing, and then MMA training. And then I usually do a little bit of sauna and close for the night.
It's always funny going through your schedule. I love whenever people hear you guys' schedule. And the reason being, again, going back to the pay, they think you get all of this. If you broke it down by the pay by hour, if people only knew that y'all do it for the dedication and the love more than just the money, they would actually be really more respectful than what they are on Twitter MMA.
Yeah, I've had to break that down to a few people because I can remember I traded in my car and I'd been saving up for years and finally bought a truck. And they're like, oh, wow, so look at you balling, get a big payday. I'm like, first of all, this is a 3-year-old model that I got. 2, I traded in a vehicle that was in good condition and I saved for years to get this. Like, it wasn't like, I just went out there and spent $80,000. I'm like, this is a cheap truck. And I just got the basics, like it's nothing. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, you guys are seeing we get paid once, right? So if we do a 6-month fight camp and for 15 minutes of work, we get paid, but that's not it. We're working 7 days a week, 6 to 8 hours a day for 6 months. So I'm like, when you really break it down, one of the times I broke it down and I was getting paid 5 cents an hour.
Wow.
And I'm like, you guys think that we're making all this money, but I'm like, but if you went to your job and you worked 8 hours a day for 5 days a week and you didn't get paid until the 6-month mark, how many of you would keep working? And if you broke down, would it be worth the math? Like, we just get paid for this moment, but it's a cumulative. Like, the hardest work is that last 15 to 25 minutes, but we're working for the months leading up to that too. And people kind of lose that perspective. And then we break down, like, you have to think medicals, these, that. I'm like, we really are not getting paid very much.
No. And like I said, again, going back to, people don't give the respect to you as a professional. I know with some of the fighters that I've worked with, I own a management company as well. And some of the fighters, like, people will reach out to them and they're like, oh, well, can you sponsor? I know you've got a fight coming up. And I'm like, bro, they probably need they need the sponsors more than they can sponsor somebody if you knew what they broke it down to. So with that being said, what would be the best advice you would give someone that was wanting to become an MMA fighter?
For one, like I said, detailing out those things, because so often the fighter is getting into it. Like, we have a guy right now who's about to go pro, and I just kind of, like, unfortunately shattered that bubble in the image that he thought fighting was going to be when I explained everything he's responsible for as a professional athlete, right? And once he realizes, like, how do you get money? I'm like, yeah, that's the game. But unfortunately, we live in a world now where it's not just so important to craft yourself as a martial artist and to make sure that you're well-rounded and you're skilled, but also to craft your appearance on social media and make sure that you have a personality that people want to see. And sadly, I wish that wasn't the case. Like, my focus is training, and so often I let my social media fall away. And organizations have been very clear, like, hey, we'd pay you more, or you could get sponsors, but your social media sucks. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. I'm like, yeah, but I train more than anybody else. Like, if that person just came in here, I've already put in 4 hours and they're just doing 1 hour today. Like, doesn't that count for something? And it doesn't. So I really stressed to them the importance of making sure that they create this brand that is their social media, and make sure that if they themselves can't do it, find somebody that can. Find money, find a sponsor that will help pay for that. Be involved in their local environment, whether that's that they live in a large city or a small town, but getting involved so that you have local sponsors that can help support you, and maybe find somebody that's going to be invested for the life of your career, and not just a quick payday that you end up losing over time.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is like you said, in this day and time, especially the social media side of it, a lot of people don't. And that's one of the first things that I tell my fighters is, hey, as your manager, my job is to set you up not with short-term success, but long-term success. And the first thing that we go over is diving into the social media side of it, what you're putting out, what your brand is, and committing to that. You can't be all over the place with what you're I mean, just to be honest, I'm a lot like you. I can't sit still. That's why I do real estate. I run a management company. I've got 5 children, and we do this podcast. You see what I'm saying? Look, the struggle is real, but I grew up in the back, in Alabama. And so I'm a workaholic because I can't sit still. And so it's one of those things, you have to be very cognitive about what you put out, and then being committed to what it is that you're putting out on social media. Like, if you're going to be a foodie, be a foodie. If you're going to be a trainaholic, be a trainaholic. Whatever you're going to be, just stay consistent with it. So and that's what's going to be able to bring you in the sponsors, because you're going to be committed, and that product is the one to co-sign with you on that long-term journey.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's so many dimensions now. It's crazy. Like, even with our social media too, with this, we realized how much work it actually takes to put your presence out there more and more. And like you said, with social media just like booming up so much, there's so much you need to do in order to like become not only just the fighter that you want to be, but put you in the right position that will lead you down the line years to come. It's crazy to even think about anymore.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit more about my generation. I kind of prefaced that before. There's a lot of more awareness about just who we are and not trying to hide anymore, just being open about who you are as a person. And so I wanted to ask an open question that's a little bit vulnerable, but just kind of shed some light on it. How has it impacted you? And can you share with us what it's like being one of the first pioneers of being the first openly lesbian fighter in just MMA in general?
Yeah, in the beginning, it had a huge impact on my career. For one, I had been in the Marine Corps during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So my coming out was closeted, in the dark, silent, and constantly looking over my shoulder, thinking that somebody was going to tell my command to get me kicked out of the Marine Corps, which then makes you dishonorably discharged and incapable of getting jobs, disabilities, all of that. Right. So that impacted. So then when I got out, I was really scared, because that was the whole influence of my Marine Corps career and me coming out. And I couldn't even do that. Not that I wanted to like shout it from the mountains, but I just wanted to be true to who I was and not hide it anymore. And I didn't know what that was going to mean in MMA. I didn't want to alienate my training partners. And so often I heard in other gyms where people that were open were just completely having a difficult time, or even kicked out of their gyms or not allowed in gyms because they were openly homosexual, whether it was male or female. Right. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to risk that. This is my happy place. I love coming here. I don't want to ruin that, but I also don't want it to be a surprise. if I show up somewhere with my girlfriend,
Yeah.
so how do I balance those things? And I can remember my coach at the time, I was doing sprints, and he was just sitting there eating candy and stuff and doing sprints. He's like, hey, what do you think of her? You think she's cute? I'm like, what? And I just keep doing sprints. I'm like, okay, come back. And I was like, hey, we haven't really talked about it. He's like, yeah, I know you're gay. And I was like, oh. He's like, I don't care. He's like, all I care about, are you a good person? Are you a good fighter and a good teammate? Yeah, keep going. I'm like, oh, cool. All right, this is awesome. So I was really fortunate in finding somebody like that who didn't care about those things. He's like, we're all a little gay. It's fine. Like he's a totally cool guy, right? And I was really fortunate because I knew other people weren't experiencing it in the gyms that they had. But then as I started to like rise up through the ranks and I finally got a management team, my management was like, hey, we'd really like you to downplay the gay thing. I'm like, downplay the gay thing? I'm not like yelling at the rooftops. I don't understand. Like, yeah, I'm like your mouthpiece. If you could just pretend like you're straight. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like makeup, hair, curly clothes. I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. And they're like, well, you could get better sponsors, but they don't want to support a lesbian. And for the demographic that follows MMA, it's white males and white straight males. They don't want that either. And I was like, oh, then I guess I'm not getting sponsors. I guess this is what it is. So I ended up indirectly from him finding out by turning that down that I lost sponsorship opportunities, that there are some people that didn't want to fight because of that, and that I could have probably had a lot better success in the early days had I decided to pretend like I was straight and go back to the closet. And me just sticking to who I was made it a difficult road, but it's been really important to me to keep the integrity of who I was. And even when other sponsors did start to jump on board, like, hey, we want to sponsor you, but we want you to do A, B, C, and D. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in those things. I don't condone those things. And they're like, well, then you're not going to get paid. I'm like, then I guess I'm not going to work with you. That's not a company that I want to represent. So I'm going to be true to who I am. And if that means that it costs me these opportunities, then at least at the end of the day, I know closing my eyes, I was true to who I was and kept my integrity, and people know who I am for who I am, not some made up version of myself.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Let me ask you a question. Going back into your career, I mean, you've fought Valentina twice, beat her once. You fought Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, literally a gambit. When you go back and look at your career legend, do you think it had affected your career as far as with the UFC of not pushing what they wanted as their narrative, just being open?
So the UFC was the first time that I finally felt like an organization was in support of who I was. Because originally everybody knows, like Dana White saying like he's not supportive of the gays. And then that changed as he got to know who I was. I was like, yeah, this doesn't matter. This is an important part. And then he sent me out to be a part of like fundraisers and charity events for up and coming LGBT communities, for different LGBT centers. So that narrative changed completely. And I never felt that way when I was at the UFC. Really the part that it was before the UFC where I felt like that was restricting things. And then certainly from sponsors who were willing to jump on board, I definitely felt like that limited stuff, but never from the UFC specifically.
That's awesome.
Well, it's fascinating why people even care, especially, I mean, now we have hindsight, right? But still, it's just like, it's just weird how it's like, that was even an issue at the line, like you just, if you beat someone's butt, that should be enough to like get you onto the next one, right? People want to see entertainment. It's not all about that stuff anyways. So it's just funny looking back on it now.
But then if you also look, like you said, the changing climate of social media is you can be this talented and this phenomenal MMA fighter, and you could have like say 50-0 record. But if you have 10,000 followers on Instagram, 5,000 followers on TikTok, you're not going to get the big fights. You're not going to get the big sponsorship, right? It's that the persona, having that brand. So in that same token, you could have an untalented fighter who does TikTok dances and all the trends. They're on Instagram. They have an OnlyFans. And as a result, they're getting big paydays and big. So like as much as it doesn't matter, it 100% matters, right? Because you
1,000% matters.
If you had a lesbian that was like uber attractive, that every male or female, everybody's like, she's hot. Untalented, she's going to have a better chance of getting the big paydays and sponsorship than somebody that looks like your soccer mom, and you're like 25% say she's attractive and 75% say unattractive. that is the reality of where it is. And that's a sad world. It should be, as a martial artist, you're tuning in for the fights. Do you enjoy watching my fights? The rest shouldn't matter. But people tune in, like you look at McGregor. People either love McGregor or they hate McGregor. They tune in to watch him on that pedestal, either falling off or staying on it, right? And it's very much there. If he didn't do all the trash talking, he would not be as popular as where he is today.
1000% agree. And that's where, as a lover of the fight game, it drives me insane that people, well, because honestly, like you look at your career, RDA, legendary career, but he's not a crap talker. He's not going to go out and be disrespectful. He's not going to be, he has, you know, his mindset, and people that are like that, unfortunately, are punished by not being that way, because people love the chisme, the drama, and they want the Conor McGregors that are on there, and they're like, oh, yeah, and every little independent thing. And it's sad to see that we've come to that, but unfortunately, it's the world kind of
that we live in right now.
We have to be subjected to it. We can only hope and pray that things go away from that, hopefully. So
we had a quick question. How do you balance your personal life with the demands of being a professional fighter and also like being a mother? How do you manage all that at once?
The easy answer, my wife. I mean, if it really came down to me, you know, there was definitely a point before my wife where I wondered if I wanted to have a child. I've never, even since I was a toddler, I'm like, I want this womb to be barren. But I did also believe that I had love to give, to adopt a child, you know, to be in that position. But I never wanted to bear children. So I wonder, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll adopt a child. And they're like, man, I have a crazy lifestyle. That wouldn't be fair to a child for me to put them through this crazy lifestyle of, hey, sometimes I'm home and I'm there with giving everything I have, and then other times I'm not there at all and I give you nothing. Like, that's not fair. And my wife is the balancing person, is able to put all those pieces together, because she is the consistent in our lives. It's always there. You know, we live in Tennessee, we have 6 acres, we have a farm going. So she's able to give my son so many different looks in life. And when I now go away for fight camp, because it was really hard when he was little, and I'm in fight camp, but I'm at home. And so he's like, how come mommy's here, but she's not? Like, she's out in the garage working out, but she can't come in and play with me. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm sorry. Like, you can't explain that to a child, right? Where he's like, well, how come she can go to the gym, but I can't go play with her at the gym? And he wasn't understanding. So now I go away. He's like, okay, I get it. She goes away. And then when she comes home, she takes me to school. She makes our food. She does homework with me. She goes, so when I'm there, I'm there. And then when I'm gone, I'm gone. It's like, when he's at school, I'll do my workouts. And then when he comes home from school, I'm there. So it's not conflicting with everything. And then when I have a fight booked, I go away to San Diego, or I go away to Virginia Beach, so that I can concentrate there and still give him calls and still FaceTime him. But it's not putting as much stress. And he definitely has a better connection understanding that. But all that's achievable just because of my wife. If she wasn't there, I don't know what I'd have to do with my son and how we could actually hold that life together.
Well, and I think it's cool that you actually, you know, I came from a very rough childhood. So even that you had that mindset of thinking even before the beginning is really cool, to think like, hey, I want to put 100% of myself into making you feel loved and wanted and needed and cared for. That, to me, you get mad respect for thinking about that, because a lot of people don't think about that. They just think, they watch these movies or they watch these things and they think, oh, I really want to be a parent so I can be on social media and talk about how great of a parent I am and all of this stuff. So that's really cool to see that you thought about those things even before, you know, you had a child. So that's really cool. And kudos to your wife for being there to support you, and you ultimately support. It's cool to see that unity and that connection.
Thank you.
With that, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself with MMA?
Evolution. You know, it's something I always love a challenge, and I've been that way my whole life. Even my mom was saying that she asked about like my training partners. She's like, you need a challenge. You can't have training partners. You'll create a challenge just to have it.
Yeah.
And for MMA, that's one of the things I love about it is because like if I let boxing, I don't concentrate on boxing and striking, I let that fall for a little bit, somebody else will kick my butt because they're focusing on that. And if I let jiu-jitsu fall away, the same thing. If I let wrestling fall away, I love that about the sport, that there's so many different pieces that come into it that you have to focus on evenly to be a well-rounded martial artist. And that you're always capable of evolution. That there's never, if you get to a point where you think that you have reached the cap of possibility, you shouldn't be in the sport because somebody else is going to show you how wrong you are. And I love that MMA has influenced the other parts of my life to help me continue to evolve as a person and to continue growth and make that a constant part of who I am.
Right. It's not, I'm speechless. That's crazy because it's like you don't realize how much it's a part of your life. Like you have to continue evolving as a person. Like MMA, from what I've heard of all the interviews that we've had, is it's just such a reflection on life. Like if you don't do this, if you stay stagnant, you're never going to be able to grow as a person, and that reflects on your relationship, your personal life, you being a mother, and then also all the people that are looking up to you in order to make sure that not only you are successful, but that they are able to live their lives as well too. So that's amazing to hear.
I think it goes back to living a lifestyle, and you see that people that have had, there's a lot of people that come into the sport that are good for a year, 2 years, maybe 3. But if you don't live the lifestyle and you're not dedicated to being a good person and good fighter and well-rounded in life, not just with MMA, but in life, you're not going to, and you see the people like you that have had an extensive career, is because you have a good, pure heart and you're always looking to elevate yourself, not just as a fighter, not just with striking, but as an individual. So definitely see that. So we're going to kind of lighten things up a little bit. We're going to have some rapid fire questions here. We're going to say some things. You pop off the first thing that comes into your head whenever we say it. And you are on the clock. Who is your favorite fighter growing up?
Chris Cyborg.
That's a good one. I like it.
She trains here locally too, in the OC too.
Nice.
What is your favorite travel destination?
Ooh, I think right now, just because I haven't had as many opportunities, I would have to say it's Hawaii. That's been the favorite spot so far.
What island?
I've only been to the Big Island.
The Big Island?
I want to see the other parts, and that's definitely the future, is to travel more, but for right now, just the Big Island.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Lack of manners.
Oh, yeah. I hope that's good to teach to your son as well too. Make sure that they have good manners off the bat too.
Exactly.
What is your favorite cheat meal?
Steak, French fries, and cheesecake.
Oh, what type of cheesecake are we going for? Just traditional New York style, or do you have something special?
No, I like to go bougie. I'll go with like a caramel cheesecake with a creme brulee topping.
That sounds so good.
I just started a diet too. It's broken. Cheesecake Factory it is today. What is your hidden talent?
Challenging myself.
That's a good one.
Is always constantly seeking challenge and evolution, and being able to evolve and grow, not only as like an athlete, but as a person as well.
Takes a special person to be so self-aware and to make sure like this, just seeing the blind spots in who you are too. That's really critical, you know. What is your favorite song?
Ooh, see, I feel like that changes. That's a hard one. I don't have a favorite song, just because I feel like
let's just go with this. What's gonna be the walkout song for this next fight?
Okay, so that's easy. If we're going favorite walkout song, it's Biddy Benassi, Satisfaction.
I like it. Who is your favorite actor or actress?
Ooh, probably have to go with favorite actor. I'm a big fan of Johnny Depp.
We're talking about
Anything Johnny Depp.
Pirates of the Caribbean, The Tourist. What are we talking about?
And that's what I mean is he has such a range, right?
Right.
From back to going from like
Edward Scissorhands.
exactly going from Edward Scissorhands to all the way up to Sweeney Todd, like all of it. I love the adversity and
The
that how he
diversity, yeah.
he's so animated in every character that he is.
What is your favorite TV show or movie?
Probably TV show would be How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, I like that one too.
yes.
Oh, that's a classic one. Yeah, so funny.
You're coming off with all the good ones, good answers tonight. Last one. If there was a zombie invasion, what one fighter would you want on your team?
Oh, see, probably need to go with somebody crazy. Good question. I'm gonna go with Tim Kennedy.
Woo.
Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to think he's a jack of all trades. He can survive. He can shoot. He's strong. He's healthy. He's the guy.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally.
And if anything happens, he can just throw me on his back and backpack me everywhere.
That's
Like,
what I was
more
gonna
can
say.
ask for?
That's what I was gonna say. Bigger than anything, I always look at who can carry me. Who can carry me? So let's get. We know you're busy with your schedule. We'll ask one last question. This one's kind of deep. If you need to take a second to think about it, feel free. If today was your last day, what is it that you want Liz to be remembered for?
I think there's a few things I want to be remembered for. For one, being a martial artist, regardless of any animosity I may have towards an opponent, at the end of the fight, we both put it on the line. I believe in being respectful to my opponent. I still shake the hands of them and their coaches, right? I'm not a trash talker. I've never been known for that. That's not all of a sudden going to change. And for somebody to provoke me to trash talk, they have to be a really horrible human being. They're going to get this part of me. I think too, showing people that be true to themselves. And then also, if I could achieve these dreams and achieve these goals, that anybody can. I'm not anyone special in any area. I've never been excellent in sports, excellent in school, like nowhere. I'm your C average student across the board. The only thing that I have is that I had a dream and I have work ethic and I'm persistent. And I think for anybody, setting a dream and just giving everything they have to it and just believing in themselves, and they'll find they're capable of it. I want people to learn from me to be able to find their goals, find their dreams, and to be able to achieve them.
I like it. But I will tell you this. You are something special in the light of, just to be honest, this is being brutally transparent. I'm the most brutally honest person probably you'll ever meet. That's probably why I've been divorced twice, because I tell people all the time, if you don't want the real answer, don't ask me. But I'll tell you, your values of staying true to yourself, your military service, all of those things. And I'll be honest with you, you've touched my heart only in the short time that we've done this interview. Hearing your story and knowing now more about your background, it's touched my heart to know. And so you are a very special person, and I'm so glad to have met you and to be able to hear more about your story, to be able to put out, because I don't know if you know this, but your story and your legacy is going to help so many people, and that is massive. So I just want to thank you, not just for your fighting, but for the person that you are. I truly appreciate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by. For me, it was just awesome just to hear how you were willing to just go through anything that you had to, even if it was not the easiest road that you're going to take. You just trusted in who you were as a person before it was all popular to do it, before social media was a thing. And you just still continue like, hey, I'm going to do it my way. Like, I know that this wasn't plan A, B, or C, as you said, right? But you're going to make it happen. And the fact that you're willing to get a little creative and also stick to what you knew, I think for me, that's really powerful just to see as a young man, and just to learn what it really takes to get to where you want to be. It's just very fascinating to hear about. So thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll be tuning in. Definitely be cheering for you in the next couple of weeks. If you ever out here, we're in Orange County. If you are ever out in San Diego and you need anything, we're always here. We appreciate you so much for coming on, and thank you so much.